Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
It was breath that filled our lungs, and every breath we breathe in love, we breathe in life, we breathe in you, God. So take a breath and breathe in deep. Listen now to your heartbeat. Every heartbeat, we breathe in you, God. Oh, the beauty of this love that holds us all together. The wonder of this land. Hearts that you have nurtured. Can we know this love that you have offered? Oh, let us breathe. We have a home, a sign of comfort. We have a chance to love each other, one another, to love like you, God. Oh, the beauty of this love that holds us all together. The wonder of this land, the hearts that you have nurtured. Can we know this love that you have offered? can we know this love that you have offered? Oh, let us breathe love. Oh, let us breathe love.
Good morning, Crosspointe. In the wake of the tragic killings in the Atlanta area earlier this week, I want to start today by just giving us some space to practice a tradition that goes all the way back to the New Testament church, and that is to mourn with those who mourn. 8 beautiful humans lost their lives to gun violence this week, and one is still fighting for his life. 6 of those killed were of Asian descent, and 7 of them were women. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the killer or his motives, but it is a patchwork quilt of just about all of the major sicknesses that our society suffers from, including racism, misogyny that's fueled by shame-based religious teaching around sexuality, and the fetishization and objectification of Asian women in particular. And the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, understandably right now, is angry and scared. And because this tragedy comes in the context of a well-documented uptick in hate crimes and discrimination against Asian Americans over the last year during this pandemic. And so this morning as Crosspointe, I want us to show up for our Asian American brothers and sisters, both within our church community and in the surrounding community and in our country. So I'm going to read the names of those who lost their lives. So many times when there's a tragedy like this, the conversation quickly veers off into issues and the humanity is lost. So I want to read these names. These are our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our brothers and our sons and fathers. I want to read their names, and I want to ask you to give a moment of silence for each. And maybe you want to repeat the names into your mind, or maybe even out loud. Maybe you want to say a prayer for their loved ones who are devastated right now by their loss. Soon Chung Park. Hyun Jung Grant. Soon Cha Kim. Yong A. Yu. Xiao Jie Tan. Dao Yo Feng. Delana Ashley Yan. Paul Andre Michaels. God, we're humbled by our vulnerability in this world. We're mindful of both the gift of life and its fragility, and how this life can be snuffed out if we don't care for one another. So God, I pray that in this hour, with every word, every song, every prayer, that you would bind us together in our humanity. Each and every one of us beautifully and wonderfully made in your image. Amen.
Good morning, Crosspointe. Thank you for joining us. I don't know about you, but I cannot believe that Easter is only 2 weeks away. I also cannot believe that this is going to be our second Easter that we're celebrating together online. And while our adult experience is online, our children's ministry team has put together an awesome event for our Kids Point families. It's called an Easter Extravaganza. Now, what is an Easter Extravaganza, you might ask? Well, it is a COVID-safe version of a good old-fashioned Easter egg hunt, and it's happening on Saturday, April 3rd at 1:00 p.m. We invite our Kids Point families to bring their own Easter baskets and make sure that you're wearing your mask. And then when you're there, you're going to look for 12 giant Easter eggs. And when you find these Easter eggs, that's going to be an opportunity for you to get a special treat or to complete an excellent activity. So if you want more information, we invite you to go to crosspoint.org/kidseaster. Speaking of good eggs, I cannot believe that we are preparing to celebrate the graduation of the class of 2021. So in June, we will have our senior recognition event. If you are the parent of a graduating senior, you're going to want to make sure that you sign up for your child to participate in this event. Because as a community, this is our last opportunity to celebrate our seniors before they launch into the world as adults. So parents of graduating seniors, hopefully you received an email from me earlier this week with details about some events leading up to senior recognition, one of which is happening today. But if you did not get that email, please let us know at students@crosspoint.org so that we can get you all of the information that you need to make sure that your graduating senior can participate in senior recognition. Last, if you are an adult that is interested in learning about some new things, diving into a new topic, and having great discussion around that topic, we invite you to join our spring book studies. The book studies range in topic. Some are about parenting, spirituality, justice, and the studies also range in length. You can find more information about them, and you can go ahead and sign up for one at crosspoint.org/book-discussions. As you can see, there is a lot going on in our community. If you want to participate in helping to fund all that is going on in this community, we encourage you to contribute financially. You can do that through stocks, PayPal, mail-in checks, debit cards, and you can do that by going to crosspoint.org/contribute, or you can text Crosspoint NC to 77977 and a link will be sent to your phone, and you can choose there how you would like to contribute. Thanks, Crosspoint.
Good morning and happy Sunday to you. Dear Steve, I'm not sure what to do with my faith. There are so many books and experts and opinions, each of them claiming to be true and others to be less true or wrong or even evil. I feel overwhelmed by all the divisiveness, and sometimes I'm tempted to just give up on all of it. But I still love Jesus and still believe in right and wrong and don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I have no interest in getting good at arguing about it. What do you suggest? Sincerely, Steve. I get emails and comments like this from time to time. And so today I thought I would address it in the context of this series, The Heart Knower. We're going to move today through an entire chapter of the Gospel of Mark, and while I don't think it's going to connect squarely for everyone, when I'm done, I hope that some of us are going to very much connect with what we're going to cover today, and maybe even rediscover our faith meaningfully and our heart underneath a whole lot of noise. So here we go. Mark chapter 6. It begins this way. Jesus left that place and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astounded. They said, "Where did this man get all of this? What is this wisdom that has been given to him? What deeds of power are being done by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? And aren't his sisters here with us? Don't we know this guy? How can he know all of the things that he knows at such a young age? How is he this good at being a rabbi already? How can he do the things that he's doing? What's the source of his seemingly newfound abilities?" because we know this guy, right? Remember, whatever opinion you hold of somebody about the earlier years of their life, that's true forever. You can't change that. Just like the girl you hated in 9th grade, she's still worthy of that hate in your late 30s, right? How did the Jesus they grow up with, turn into the Jesus that they see now? They're perplexed. They're impressed. They're very impressed, actually, which is what makes this next sentence almost comical. And they took offense at him. Then Jesus said to them, prophets are not without honor except in their hometown and among their own kin and in their own house. It's like he's saying you can get respect everywhere except at home, where people think that they know you because they knew you in the past, and they think that they therefore know everything about you. It's fascinating, isn't it? Jesus is the great reconciler of the human family, but with his own relatives, his own town, he hits a wall. There's another place in one of the other Gospels where he actually says his friends were his family because his actual blood relatives had just become that difficult, that antagonistic to his existence. So, maybe we don't need to feel so bad if when we go home, whatever that might mean, there's a disconnect. It feels like we hit a wall with some of those folks. Not just difficult, all relationships are difficult to some degree. I'm talking about a scenario where you go home and you can't seem to shake free of some really old opinions that are held about you, who you're allowed to be, what you're allowed to think and feel. It's like they have this image of you that's just stuck. And sometimes it's just annoying, but sometimes it's bad. It can be toxic and hurtful and demeaning. So sometimes maybe we should remember that kin isn't exclusive to blood. Kin can also be chosen. It doesn't mean gaps in connection with your family doesn't hurt. But we should remember that if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for you and I. We can choose family, the people who celebrate who we actually are. They don't demand that we conform to who they think we should be or thought we used to be. And remember, this cuts both ways. We have to remember to be willing to be that home people can come back to and be reintroduced to somebody that we think that we know. You know, we often think we've got somebody figured out. And the person that we knew decades ago, they're essentially the same. They're still in there, but over the years, maybe they've learned a lot about being that person. And so they deserve to be re-seen. So let us re-see them. That's Golden Rule 101. So Jesus goes home, impresses everybody with his wisdom, his ability to set things right and meet needs. But this is the very thing that becomes a stumbling block for them. Like, who does he think he is, Mr. Big Shot, coming back trying to fool us into thinking highly of him or something? So his own town turns on him for the crime of being awesome. Verse 5. And he could do no deed of power there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and cured them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. They're amazed at him. He's amazed at them. He hits this wall and can't do for them what he'd like to do for them because of the wall they built. I mean, wouldn't it be interesting to find out that some of the blocks to our own development and our own healing and peace, our own growth, those blocks are walls we're building? Wouldn't it be interesting to find out? This takes us to verse 7. Then he went about among the villages teaching. He called the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over unclean spirits. They can now cast out demons. And he ordered them to take nothing for their journey except for a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not put on 2 tunics. He said to them, wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave the place. If any place won't welcome you, they refuse to hear you, as you leave, just shake the dust off that's on your feet as a testimony against them. So that's what they did. They went out and proclaimed that all should repent. So repent here, remember, it's not just, hey, you, stop being naughty. It's not even chiefly about an individual. It's about repenting of what we become together, to turn from the systems that we start to idolize, that make us idolize power and wealth and self-interest, and instead to live in the way of the kingdom. A complete contrast to the way of Caesar and Herod, all those promising peace in return for things like allegiance, to turn from all that and to turn to the Spirit we so often ignore. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick, and cured them. So Jesus sends a delegation to multiply the work, but it's not a perfect program. They cast out many demons, but not all. They cured many who were sick, but not all. And sometimes their motives and their message were misunderstood and even rejected, in response to which Jesus would just have them leave town and brush the dust off their feet as they did. You know, as if to say, don't carry any of that failure with you. Just move on and do what you can where you can. Verse 14. King Herod heard of it, for Jesus' name had become known. He's getting popular. And some were saying, John the Baptizer has been raised from the dead, and for this reason, these powers are at work in him. But other people were saying, no, it's Elijah. And others said, well, it's a prophet, like one of the prophets of old. But when King Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. As Jesus' popularity is growing, people are trying to explain it, and many are explaining it by attributing the movement to other people. And they're saying John the Baptist has been resurrected. No, it's Elijah or one of the other all-time greats. That one of those has been reincarnated. The King Herod says, I think this Jesus and his disciples are actually John the Baptist and his followers rising from the grave and starting their movement back up, which is a terrifying prospect for the king because he had felt ostensibly pretty bad, at least conflicted, about beheading John the Baptizer. But he did do it. And the reason that he did it was this creepy, power-leveraging public scandal in which King Herod divorced his own wife in order to marry his brother's wife, sending the family and a sense of propriety into total chaos. And when John the Baptist found out about it, he called them out publicly and then got thrown in jail for that. And so then later at this banquet, after Herod's former niece turned stepdaughter dances erotically for everybody in attendance, all the attendants, they go nuts for this. And Herod essentially grants her a wish. And so she goes, counsels with her vindictive mother, and cashes in on the wish on the spot and says, we want John the Baptist's head on a platter for shaming us publicly. So John was dead within the hour. And remember, this is Jesus' cousin, murdered for holding a powerful leader who claims faith into account. So always in the background of Jesus' work is his grief and probably his anger that there's this guy, the king of the Jews, King Herod, was actually this monster who murdered his cousin and truly represented the very worst of abused power. So that has happened. It takes us to verse 30. The disciples get back from having been dispatched by Jesus to other towns. Verse 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus. They're back, and they told him that all they had done and taught. And he said to them, okay, come away to a deserted place by yourselves and get some rest. That was a lot of work. Because many are coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. They're exhausted. They're high profile now, and they're exhausted. And they went away in a boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now, many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. They're running around the water. And as he went ashore, he saw the great crowd, and he had compassion for them because they were like sheep with no shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. What did he teach them? It doesn't say, but apparently it's whatever guidance you give to people you feel compassion for, like a herd of vulnerable souls with no one taking care of them or protecting them. So, most assuredly, he spoke comfort and encouragement to them, not threat and shame. When it grew late, verse 35, his disciples came to him and said, this is a deserted place, all right, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat. But Jesus answered them, will you give them something to eat? They said to him, are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? That's a lot of money. And he said to them, how many loaves do you have? Go and see. When they went and counted and found out, they said, we have 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he ordered them to get all the people to sit down in groups on the grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and of 50s. Very organized outdoor banquet is set up. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and he divided the 2 fish among them all. And all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish, leftovers. Those who had eaten the loaves numbered about 5,000 men. That's 5,000 men. And that doesn't count women and boys and girls and babies who were probably present. It's a lot of people who just ate. Very organized, peaceful hillside banquet where everyone had their basic needs met without qualification or indebtedness or ranking or interviews to make sure they believed the right thing, or would waste the calories on lives that were less pious than they should be for such a miracle. They're hungry, forgotten people. They're seen, they are fed with leftovers in the fridge. When evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land, Jesus was. When he saw that they were straining at the oars against an adverse wind, he came toward them in the morning, walking on the sea. He intended to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and screamed. For they all saw him, and they were terrified. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind ceased. And they were utterly astounded, for they didn't understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. The word hardened here is translated from a Greek word, porao, and is the word that you would use to describe a callus, like on your hand, which of course isn't evil. It's in place to protect what was vulnerable. It has the unfortunate side effect, though, of dulling sensitivity. Jesus prays and then strolls across the stormy sea, which justifiably freaks out the disciples when they see him. And after being told not to be afraid, he stops the storm and then steps into the boat like somebody stepping into a house off of a front porch. And they go a little bonkers for a second because Mark tells us they still had no idea who they were dealing with, even after seeing how Jesus just fed all those people out of a single bento box. Because, well, they had calluses on their hearts. Why? Why would they have protective, metaphoric calluses on their metaphoric hearts? Maybe because they've been tricked before. Because they've been taken advantage of before. They've been kicked recently out of houses of their own people, kicked out of towns populated by their own relatives. They've grown up impoverished and embittered by the empty promises of powerful people. They've been confused about God, taught lies about God, and even in the presence of the Son of God, still feel a little confused about God. There's so much they know that they don't understand, they're frustrated about, they don't get it. All they know is this Jesus, as he draws them close, the closer that they get, the more confusing and tiring a lot of it can seem. There are so many things to laugh and to be in awe over. Moving in step with this Jesus, of course, but also it seems that people can be even more divided in his presence. As soon as the details about faith and God and people, that comes into play, it can be so divided. Their hearts are calloused for the same reason many of our hearts grow calluses. Being a human being who cares about right things, who wants to understand things that matter, navigating all these tensions, trying to forgive and be forgiven, trying to figure out who's right, who's wrong, what life actually is about. It can all be a little overwhelming. It can be exhausting. Verse 53. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret, and they moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. In this chapter, Jesus preaches what we can assume is a really great sermon, maybe a perfect sermon. And it's not only not universally well received, Jesus himself in his own hometown isn't even well received. And in this chapter, there are some miracles over which we could argue about to what extent they're literal or they're metaphors, and we'll never come to fully agree about all that. Like, how does God create mass catering out of one meal? How does that actually work? Because just to say it's a miracle, well, that's not an explanation, that's a label. And that label begs questions, legitimate questions by thinking people. Why doesn't he always do this miracle? Why doesn't he do this miracle now? Do people's ears pop when all that matter suddenly arrives and displaces the atmosphere around them? And how does Jesus walk on choppy waves in a storm? Does he cut right through, or does he bob up and down with the waves? Does one foot go up and the other down when the swells slap into each other? And what if water walking was a metaphor? Would that mean he was less worthy to be called Lord? Is Jesus a lesser Lord if he swims? See, in just a couple minutes, I can create several denominations that never talk to each other. And we haven't even gotten to the healings and the demons, which you and I might have tons of personal stories about, but no matter how you slice it, there's no replicable formula here in the 6th chapter of Mark. See, the sermons, they're not universal slam dunks, and we don't even have the text of them if they were. And the miracles are hard to agree about in terms of explanation or meaning. And the healings and the exorcisms are incredible in the truest sense of the word. What in the world do we do with all of this? Because whatever we do, someone else is going to do something else with it. And the difference in what we do with it might blossom into a full-blown, unbridgeable divide that makes us so tired we're tempted to just give up. It's exhausting. How do we keep from growing calloused hearts? Stay engaged, but not grow calloused hearts. Not keep from becoming mean people. Calloused hearts, self-protective hearts that lose their sensitivity to what the Spirit is actually up to underneath a ton of noise. Well, as I look at this chapter and do so as a representative sample of Jesus' way, that's how I look at this chapter, I can't help but notice that the only thing no one seems to argue about or even really misunderstand is kindness. In this chapter, you can argue about doctrine and dogma and the supernatural all you want, but nobody argues about hungry people eating. No one debated as to whether human beings were the objects of tangible acts of compassion and kindness. Others might have argued about the meaning or the significance about it later, but the recipients of this meal, this tangible kindness, there was nothing to misunderstand. There was nothing to argue about, nothing to be self-righteous about. There are no tests over correct doctrine. No one had to take worthiness tests or sell their own value relative to others in order to eat. Kindness offered, kindness received. Sometimes we get so overwhelmed with how much there is to know about faith and how many different ways there are to engage with it, understand it, celebrate it, correct it. You can go online and quite literally hear hundreds of thousands of new sermons posted today. Go to the bookstore and look how many books about how to get these ancient mysteries right. Go on YouTube and look at the millions of videos on, quote, what the Bible actually teaches about, fill in the blank. And when you're done, you'll still not know if what you now know is the right thing to know. But others will still be insisting that they know and will be labeling themselves and others accordingly. And in the face of all of this, many of us we want to throw up our hands and just say, forget it. I'm just going to try to be a good person. And that's good, to be a good person. But here's a word of caution. Sometimes goodness is defined by not doing what you think is bad. It's a religion of not messing things up. It's a heart encased in a protective callus that withdraws from the depths of human life. And this is completely understandable. Sometimes it's even advisable. I think it was the Dalai Lama who once said, do good in the world, but if you can't figure out how to do good, at least don't make the world any worse. That's not a direct quote, but something like that. That's advisable at times. But a religion of just trying not to be a bad person, a religion of, well, at least I didn't murder anybody, a religion of what's really careful in action, a faith that tries to be positive by not producing a negative, though it's a good start. This isn't what Jesus was going for. So allow me to suggest, as one of the hundreds of thousands of sermons that are newly available today and will be buried by this time next week under a mountain of more, let me suggest, if you and I want to simplify our faith in Jesus and keep our hearts open and our minds clear, let us truly engage in the way of kindness. Not niceness. Let's figure out how to be chipper for Jesus and paint a smile on. To actually be kind. Feel however you feel and be kind. Our engaging in the way of kindness is engaging in the way of Jesus. And as you and I engage in this way of kindness, it'll be helpful to remember that what the work of kindness is, in effect, is deprogramming unkindness. Because kindness is our nature. We're made in the image of eternal kindness. It gets buried under unkindness. So uncovering this nature takes intention because we're born into fear systems to one extent or another that get us trapped in fear. A culture that keeps us worried about limited resources and scarcity, fears about being taken advantage of, fears that no matter what we do or what we achieve, important others are never going to see us. We're born into a system that traps us in a competition as well. All of us being programmed from our first days of life to believe that in order to be somebody, you have to be more than somebody else. Many of us never realizing that if I'm trying to beat someone, I'm very unlikely able to be kind to that same someone at the same time. So it's a lot of deprogramming kindness is. It's about getting back to who we really are. If you like, the work of kindness is repentance. It's returning to who we actually are, to who God is, turning away from that which obscures who we are, who God is, turning away from what got our hearts calloused. And I don't want to make it any more complicated than this, because I don't want this to become one more thing for us to be overwhelmed by and to bait and cross-check and figure out how to say it in Greek. Kindness is a bottom line. Jesus was willing to go on record in a brief record like a gospel as not trying to be understood by anything more than willing to treat you like a beloved sibling, as true kin. Sometimes I ask, can we make a whole religion out of this? Out of a moment-to-moment kindness to ourselves and to creation? Can we make an entire way out of being involved in the world in such a way as to see it as beautiful enough to be kind to enter into the awareness of Jesus about ourselves and others, even though other people won't always have that same awareness? Can we make an entire philosophy out of living and remaining consciously in the flow of God's kindness and extending that kindness to others? Well, as I look at Jesus move through the world, I observe that it's more than enough. It's more than enough. Look at our world, not as a separate thing out there, but as the place where we are, where you are, and all of its pain and all of its joy and all of its complexity. Think about all the things we've thrown at it, all the things that we say about it, that we preach about it, our verdicts, our judgments, trying to reshape it and contort it into something else. How we have forgotten that we're image bearers of the divine. We're all one family, fooled into thinking we're not, that we're actually little collections of right and wrong ideas. We've forgotten who we actually are. I mean, maybe this gym will help you and maybe even blow your mind. Are you ready for this? To be kind is to see kin. Kindness is the recognition of kinship. It's a way of seeing that to be kind is to make family simply out of the act of engaging in that kindness. It's to announce in your actions, in your generosity, in your justice, in your engagement with setting things right that aren't right. Kindness is your measurable way of saying, you can already see that we are already family. We're not teams, we're not opponents, we're not adversaries. We're not each other's thems, really, we're family. Even though so many people have forgotten this, or they won't know it, and they still prefer turning on each other, clinging to their team jersey, clinging to the things that keep others, that keep cruelty in play, they keep injustice alive, they keep the us and them going. Some people are really stuck in that. Well, for those of us engaged in kindness, we're not just trying to not be bad people, we're engaged in tangible ways of seeing people and participating in their well-being and not letting our hearts get so protected from pain that they get protected from being image bearers of kindness in the process. For those of us who often just don't know what to think, who to listen to, or how to make faith an actual part of their life, look at Jesus and see that the way of kindness is enough.
If I could tell the world just one thing, it would be that we're okay. And not to worry, because worry is wasteful and useless in times like these. I will not be made useless. I won't be idle by despair. I'll gather myself around my faith, the light the darkness most fears. And my hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, and they're not yours. They are my own, and I am never broken. Poverty stole your golden shoes, but it didn't steal your laughter. Heartache came to visit me, but I knew it wasn't ever after. We will fight, not out of spite, because someone must stand up for what's right. And where there's a man who has no voice, there are shallows singing. And my hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, and they're not yours. They are my own, and I am never broken. 'Cause in the end, only kindness matters. In the end, only kindness matters. I will get down on my I will pray, and I will get down on my knees, and I will pray, and I will get down on my knees, and I will pray. 'Cause my hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, and they're not yours. They are my own, and I'm never broken. My hands are small, I know, but they're not yours. They are my own, and they're not yours. They are my own, and I will not be broken. We will not be broken. We are God's eyes, we are God's hands, God's heart, we are God's eyes, and God's hands, and God's heart.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome home. If you are in need of assistance during this crisis, please reach out at crosspoint.org/help.